This is a Rise of Kingdoms crash course. Over a year now that I've been uploading videos, there's been so many little tips and tricks that don't quite fit neatly into a video topic, or that I think didn't get covered well enough the first time around, or is just generally too valuable to not bring up again. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over a wide variety of tips, between commander tips to gem spending tips to growth tips and everything in between. So if you want to find a specific section, I'll include some timestamps in the description, as well as the fact that you'll be able to check them through the actual timestamps at the bottom of this video. But without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk growth tips. Growth is one of the things that is hardest to come by in Rise of Kingdoms. At the start of the game, it comes very quickly, and then you hit a plateau. Whether that is a stone wall of researches, a stone wall of building upgrades, but regardless, it runs into a very difficult portion of the game where you're developing, and that may be 20, 30 million power, it may be even later depending on where your building is and how long you've been playing. But here are a couple tips to help you get through this a little bit faster. First, make sure you have a building upgrade running at all times if they're not all level 25. If you don't have the blueprints, that's understandable, but they shouldn't be any less than level 24 if your city hall is level 25. And the sooner you can upgrade the buildings for your resources, the better, because they actually pay for themselves over time versus what you'd have to spend in gems to get those resources. So don't sleep on those buildings. Especially the gold node takes the longest to pay for itself, so make sure you get that done sooner. I'll include a link in the description to the video where I covered that, because I think it's super useful, but as a general rule, the sooner you can get your buildings for resources up to level 25, the better. Now to do that, you have to buy the blueprints, which you have to buy through the actual shop here, and you go over to other, and these masters blueprints. Two things to remember with this. One, do not buy more than you need. So research which ones need the blueprints and which ones don't, because there are a few that do not need blueprints. And two, try to line these up with your More Than Gems event, because you're going to have to spend the gems anyway. So if you wait till More Than Gems, even if you're not going to use them for 2-3 weeks, you get the added value of the bonus rewards for spending more gems and More Than Gems for buying the thing you're going to buy anyway. This also goes true for the books and the arrows, although with the arrows you probably won't have a problem building them up. But especially for the books for your castle, the same thing. When you're developing, try to use events to your advantage. Whether that is the KvK event where you can exchange shop on the 3rd level of Past Glory, whether that is your More Than Gems event where you're spending the gems on these items that you're going to use in a week or two or a month or even later. And just do some research ahead of time, figure out how many you need, and use those to your advantage, because they are insanely useful if you can take it and line it up with an event like More Than Gems or KvK and get yourself some added value. In addition to building and research, here are some troop growth tips. So the first most common way you're going to see people grow their troops is through using a civ that gives you increased troop trading speed. Germany is a great example because it is a pretty solid unit, and while it's not Arabia level good for rallies, it's very solid for field and respectable, and the trading speed and action point recovery are great, especially since one of the best ways you can boost your growth is to actually use all your AP every day, because the game is essentially giving you free speed ups, resources, and other items just for doing this every day. So make sure you're using all your daily AP, because it is invaluable for growth, whether you are 20 million power or 120 million power. Those items are free. Take advantage of them. The other ways you can increase your troop growth is by using a rune, if you can find one at your circle, or getting the Duke title once your kingdom has reached its first season. Both those give you increased trading speed, which is super useful. And what I recommend too is, if you can plan ahead, use troop expansions if you have them with those bonus troop speeds because if you don't need to collect the troops every day, you get that same troop speed over the course of 20,000 troops instead of 2. So while a 15% rune and a 10% from Duke can give you 25% training speed, and it would make that 2,000 25% faster, if you use an expansion, that 25% goes over all those troops. So while you have to wait longer, you actually get more troops per second out of that. It is insanely useful, especially if you can get a training buff on top of that, which you can get once your kingdom reaches its first season of KvK. So just keep those in mind and try to time those well if you have expansions and use them. This is also true for when you're planning on getting into KvK, to load these up for pre-KvK, because you get a bunch of free troops that help your kingdom get placed higher. On top of the fact that you don't have to use any speed ups. It's great for bastions. If you are looking to do training bastions, you can train 7,000 T5 troops if you have them, and just wait 5-6 days and they're ready to go without using any speed ups. And you could do 3 training bastions in one day, or you only have to speed up the one while the other 2 are passively running, giving you some options, as long as you have the storage of the expansions. This is also true for events, but we'll get into that a little later in the video. Next, let's talk about some commander tips. Now, these are a little more subjective, but they're very important to listen to as well, especially if you're new to the game. The first, and I'll say the least subjective and just straight up true tip I can give you, is hold onto your gold heads, especially while you're in the early game. Until you reach the 40-50 million power range and you start pushing towards T5, most of the time, the commander you're going to be using at that time is not going to be a meta commander when you're at T5 or when you're ready to fight very heavily in the field. And the biggest thing you can do instead, because your tech is so low, and when you have low actual tech, where you're building up to T4 and you're starting to build up to T5, you lack a lot of the raw stats, which even if you had a meta pairing, will lose to a non-meta pairing just because the player has complete T5, even if they're using the same tier march as you. Just because the raw stats they get are so ridiculous from your daily researches, which is why I mentioned in the first section that you need to be keeping those researches going all the time. Because if you can keep them running perpetually, it will do that work for you, and time is your best friend in that regard. But overall, the other thing to remember here is, in that time, you might build that meta pairing, and it'll be good, but it won't be great. And even then, like I said, you will not trade nearly as well as an off-meta pairing with better just regular research tech, let alone KvK tech and equipment and formations. So in that time, you're better off saving those heads, because when you do get to T5 and you do get to the stage where you're wanting to field fight and you have better equipment, better individual tech, and you start being able to actually build up KvK tech because you're able to farm barbarians and KvKs, then you'll be able to invest it in whatever the newest, strongest commander is. And at day 1, you'll be ready to fight, and at day 1, you'll have the best pairing. So while it does sting in the very short term, it pays off very much in the long run, just due to the fact that you have to wait so long. But the wait is well worth it because your trades are much, much better. Additionally, it gives you time to learn how to position yourself in field fights, how to fight effectively, and while it is no fun fighting with epic commanders, some of them do hold their own decently, and I covered that in a video which I'll provide in the description as well, in addition to my resource building video. But it stings in the short run, but it teaches you discipline, it teaches you positioning, and then when you do hit the stage where you can start being a heavy hitter, and you can start fighting in the field and making a huge push, you can do that with whatever the newest, flashiest, strongest commander is. Now, in the short run, there are some commanders that you can use as 5511 or 5551 that if you do want to use a commander and get good value, if you're in that in-between, that mid-30s where you're starting to field fight more effectively and you're starting to build up your strength, but you're not quite to the level of research, you can make a smaller investment and it's less punishing. Joan Prime's a good example at 5115 or 5515. William is an excellent example at 5551. Boudica also makes a great example here. And just generally, you can find those value picks where you can invest fewer heads and get a better result. That being said, it is still a gamble. So, what you could do to help ease this up when you're leveling up skills is to, whatever your goal is, let's say you want to do 5115 like we do for Joan Prime, open it up to all four and level it up, hoping that you level up the fourth skill here. And if you manage to get it to rank 5, then you just dial it back to whatever ones you want, whether you want these two for 5515 or just this one for 5115. This is still risky because you could get skill 2 or 3, but when you open it up, instead of it being a 1 in 3 chance once you have your first skill match and opening it up, you have a 1 in 3 possible chance because 1, 2, and then the one you want, to instead being, when you have it all open, and this is just rank 1, 2 possible answers out of 3, 4 total. So it does slightly increase the chance of a positive outcome. And then if you can get enough of these to max it out, then you have a 100% chance to get whatever you want from then on out. And this is a tactic that a lot of people use to save having to invest all their gold heads in one commander if its commander doesn't need to be maxed. Now I have Boudica Prime here as an example because I don't have her maxed, so I can move this dial around. But in general, if you have a commander that's like this, that's a great way to do that. Now that we've talked about just general development and commander tips, let's talk about gems, because gems are your best friend in this. You know, you can use your buildings and have them passively run and have them running at all times to really buff yourself up, and it really lets time do the work for you. But gems can do a lot of the heavy lifting too. So what we're going to do is look at your overall shop. First of all, with gems, obviously you want to save them. But with these resource items, you should always, every week, be buying these because they are the best value in the game. And even in whatever you need, just buy what you need, and you don't necessarily need to buy everything. But definitely these two and the equipment materials I very highly recommend because they're all super useful and you need them pretty much all the time. Even if you are towards the end, these equipment materials add up. AP is always useful and you always need speed ups, and you're getting them for items that you can essentially gather for free. So always be doing that. But once you get down to the gems, you want to spend your gems wisely. In the early game, there are a couple options. VIP points is great. If you want to build up, you want to try to build up your VIP level to get at least level 12, where you get 2 legendary commanders a day, because that really adds up quickly and it helps you max out commanders. Outside of that, you can also level up you could buy your blueprints, as I mentioned earlier. You could buy your books of the covenant. You can buy arrows. I don't recommend it because you can usually just farm barbarians, but if you don't have that option or you're behind schedule for some reason, that's always an option for you as well. Sage's Testimony, similarly, I don't necessarily recommend it because you can get it over time or passively, and not having a level 25 state forum does not impede your progress to anything else. Whereas your Book of the Covenant, the level 25 castle impedes your progress to Academy level 25, which impedes your progress in research, which impedes your progress to T5. So that is your biggest bottleneck, so you want to work through that as quickly as possible. Now when you buy these, what I recommend is timing them. You get events like More Than Gems, which are completely based on spending gems. When you get that event, buy these items. If you know you need 5 blueprints, buy 3 of them at this More Than Gems and then spend 1,000 on your Books of the Covenant. Then you get 7,000 gems spent, which gives you an extra 5 free gold heads, which is super useful because, like I said, you're trying to save all the gold heads. So then you can build up towards that. Similarly, if you could just need Books of the Covenant, do that. If you need a defense boost, there is a specific defense boost here, which is higher than the standard 5% you can get for free. This one's 10%, so if you are a rally or garrison leader, you need these. Stock up on them during More Than Gems. Trust me, it's well worth it because the extra 5% defense is significant. If you don't have to do any of these and you're just towards the end, you can always go in here and buy whatever you need. Materials are always a good value. Speed ups is my personal favorite because I always need more speed ups. So I'll buy that many in a day. But I try to line it up only with more than gems, because you might as well let those gems do that extra work for you. Because then it essentially just hands you free items for doing what you were already going to have to do. So if you can line it up and be patient, it is well worth the effort. If you are really behind on commanders, you can always go down to the legendary sculptures. But I really don't recommend that in the long run. I've had to do it before on short term to try to get a commander ready for garrisons. And it is a stinging value. It's not very good value. It hurts to spend those gems, but sometimes when you just need a couple more to finish a commander, that's always an option too. But just make sure your gems are doing as much work for you as possible, because you're going to have to spend them one way or the other. So if you get them to work for you, that's better. Lastly, when you come to events that involve spinning and spending gems, like the Hunt for History event, like the Wheel of Fortune event, like the Egg event, any event where you're spending gems, what I recommend is you go to a specific tier reward and stop. So for the wheel, go to 10 or 25 or 45. Don't go to 70 or don't go to 60. Go to 70 where the next tier is. You don't want to stop in between, because then you get less value. And I covered the wheel specifically in another video, and I can provide a link in the description as well. Although I'm sure by now, with all my discussions, that there's been plenty of links that are going to be provided there. But overall, the value spikes are always at those bonus values, just like more than gems, because your gems are doing more work for you. So overall, try to keep those going. Whether even in the egg event, even in the Hunt for History, go for your specific tiers. For the Hunt for History specifically, what I recommend is actually with the free hammers you get, since they carry over from event to event, save them until you have enough to get a guaranteed 5 levels, which I believe is 130. I think it's 26 per level. And then you're guaranteed to get the one, and then depending on how your luck is going, you can decide whether you want to push for the next one. And if you start the event with 130, you can earn another 30 just by doing daily things. So that would help bridge the gap. If you do get your 5 very early and you want to try to shoot for 10, and you get stuck on 8, you can get 30 to try to get to 9, and hopefully get to 10. And then if you don't, you only have to spend a small amount of gems to get to level 10. And then your gems, like I said, are doing a lot, have the heavy lifting for you in this event. So just in general, whether it's events or general gem spending, make sure your gems are doing as much work for you as possible. But with that, we'll conclude our first crash course in Rise of Kingdoms. Overall, I obviously couldn't cover everything in the game. It would be hours upon hours of video, and I would bore you to death. So if you want to see a specific topic covered, let me know in the comments. Also, if I missed a specific tip that you like to use in Rise of Kingdoms, let me know down there as well, because I might feature it in a future video, or otherwise just cover it in a different topic video. If you want to suggest other video topics, you can let me know in the comments as well, or you can join the Discord to interact with other subscribers, which link will be provided in the description and in the pinned comment. Without further ado, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.